Happy Monday, everybody, and thanks for joining us. And I'm really excited to be introducing Keenan, an Indigenous advocate who we think so highly of, Keenan. But firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of this beautiful land on which I'm sitting, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and future. Keenan, I've known you for over a decade now. I hold you in really high regard. You've taught me much, and I still can't believe that we're looking up children as young as 10. And it was a very proud moment when Igniting Change supported you to address the United Nations in Geneva a few years ago. But I'm still appalled that things really haven't changed. But what has changed is you and your wife, Carly, founded Deadly Connections 2 years ago, and you're dedicating your lives to keeping kids out of jail. And very exciting, I know that you didn't have a permanent office, and recently you've moved in with the Marrickville Legal Centre in Western Sydney. It feels like you're family to us. You understand more than anyone the importance of not talking for people. And you're really out there and you're changing it. You're right in it. And I think let's go right into what you're up to now. And can you tell us a little bit about Deadly Connections?
Yes, I can.
And welcome.
Thanks,
Jane.
Thanks,
and thank
Jane.
you for creating the time, and everybody who's on the call as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that introduction. Wow, it has been a long time, and I feel really old now that you brought it up, Jane. How long we've known each other. But before I go, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today. Here in Sydney, I'm on Gadigal land, particularly the Gadigal and Wangal people here in the inner west, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. So yeah, Deadly Connections has been conceived and sort of registered as a charity 2 years ago. In direct response to, the overrepresentation of Aboriginal people in the justice system and child protection system, along with my lived experience and my wife's lived experience, and a big need and call from community to have a culturally competent service to be able to work with our most vulnerable mob that are entrenched in certain behaviours. Since the inception of Deadly Connections, my wife and myself volunteered probably the first 12 months of that in building it up, whilst having 2 children of our own, whilst running an outreach youth program every Saturday night. So that's where it started from. And we wanted to be able to work with people and do sort of intensive client casework. So to be able to work in the child protection space, to support family and vulnerable children, to keep them connected and united, and then cross over into the criminal justice space, because we know most of them children's parents will be heavily entrenched in the criminal justice system, suffering from their own trauma and drug and alcohol and lack of mental health or mental support. So now we have 4 key programs to be able to tackle both of those systems. So we have a Deadly Families project, which operates here in the inner west and inner city. So we're targeting the child protection and risk factors of parents, particularly mums and dads, to be able to tell docs, these are your concerns around their parenting skills. These are the way we're addressing them. And now please leave the family alone so we can support them to overcome their hardships. Yeah. The second project is our Deadly Jarjums. So, sorry to go on a tangent, but deadly in Aboriginal language isn't a form of terrorist or conspiracy to hurt you. Deadly is a very positive word that's used a lot in the Aboriginal community, and it's like nice job, well done, congratulations, keep going, guys. And Jarjums within the New South Wales diet refers to children. So we have a Deadly Jarjums project, which is an early intervention and prevention program around primary school. So now what we're trying to identify is, some children that are still in struggling households that haven't made it to the child protection yet, but are falling behind at school, that, are missing days, they're not showing up. How do we make education a little bit more fun for them? So we will support the mum and dad at home, but we do an after school activity for them at school around culture, around safety, around, you know, some of the behaviors that we will be seeing in their household around drugs and domestic violence and violence, how to keep them safe, but keep them engaged in schools. The third program is the one that started with Deadly Connections, our Street Smart project, which is a detached youth work project where we go out in the community on the weekends. We provide an activity and a free feed at no cost to the young people in the community. And this was in direct response to the over-policing of Aboriginal communities. So we'd just go down to the park and we'd hang out in the park. This is their local park, and the police would be harassing them while they're in their local park saying, "What are you guys doing here? You're up to no good. You're looking to get in trouble," when actually, like, they live like across the road and no other kid in the park is being talked to like that. So that's the Street Smart project. That's mainly around 14 up to about 20, talking to them about engagement with police, how to do it respectfully, without sort of inciting them to try and arrest you and you try to catch them, you know, how to know your rights, how to respect other people in this space, and not have antisocial behavior, how to get your needs met. The third project in terms of the community stuff is our Breaking the Cycle. So as Jane touched on, we lock young people up here in Australia as young as 10. So our Breaking the Cycle will work for any other individual that don't fit into those three programs from 10 up to about 60. So that's another early intervention pre and post release from juvenile custody or adult custody. And we support them from anywhere from their most basic needs, like getting a birth certificate, getting a Medicare card, opening a bank account, opening a Facebook account, to doing the actual bigger sort of social and emotional well-being, where we link them in with mental health support, psychologists, psychiatrists. We give them cultural support and mentoring. We try to support them through getting independent accommodation, you know, really giving them the skills to participate in society and do it pro-socially. Besides the 4 community projects that we do our sort of ambassador advocacy, lobbying and campaigning. And that's where I was able to go to the United Nations to help them lift our voice here in Australia.
And Keenan, I'm just going to stop you for a second, because you've blown me away. I always get emotional when I'm talking to you. You've blown me away with what you're doing. I think I should share with people, Keenan spent more life in prison than out of prison. He has experienced, well, I'll let you say what you want to share or you don't want to share, but you've been, since you were born, you've been through sheer hell and a very chaotic life. And I love you, your compassion and your love that oozes from your every pore.
No, thank you very much.
But you've done this without any financial support. You know, you do this on the whip of an oily rag. You're there at the front line. You are doing, I cannot believe that you've talked about 4 programs. You're doing it under a budget of 6 figures a year, but you're doing it, you're in it, you're in that legal centre, you're offering legal support. You know what it's like to be in the schools. So maybe, can we just backtrack a little bit, because what you did at the beginning was made me think you were this really, you know, huge organisation. And actually, the truth is, we know it's just a couple of you. So do you want to share a little bit about how you've got to where you are now, really? And yeah.
I'll give it my best. Jane's already opened Pandora's box, so I might cry myself. So I was the youngest of 3 boys. I have 2 older siblings that are 2 and 3 years older than me. I grew up in Redfern here in Sydney, and like Jane said, the early start to my childhood was not a great childhood, so I don't really remember much because I didn't want to remember much. But my community at that time consisted of just 4 streets, and it was notoriously known as the block. There was a high level of unemployment there, a lot of poverty, a lot of crime, a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, a lot of over-policing. And to me as a kid, you know, that was normal. It was normal to go to bed at night with no food and no clean clothes in the morning to go to school. It was normal to have no electricity in the house, no running hot water. You know, that was my early start to the childhood. My parents struggled, not being employed and having, you know, skills to hold down a job. And battled with their own sort of troubles. at a very young age, my mother was taken from me to a drug overdose. And not long after my mother was taken from me, my father committed suicide. My family and my community didn't know how big these events would impact these three little boys into adulthood and teenage and into developing into young men, and basically made the decision to be able to support us at that time, to split the three of us up and to take us to different communities and different families. None of that stuff was addressed or understood how much of an impact it was. At 13, 14, I left that house. I was placed at to seek my older siblings because I wasn't connected to them to be able to heal and grieve and go through the process, of losing a loved one as individuals and families. So I thought, if I just find my brothers, I'll be all right. Unfortunately, I found one of my older brothers in Redfern at that time, and he was heavily involved in the criminal justice system, and his trauma was already showing. He was already addicted to substances and couldn't be the brother I needed him to be. This was 2000. By 2001, I think I just finished year 8. Within 4 months, I was homeless on the streets, stealing to put food in my tummy and to put clothes on my back. That brought me into contact with the criminal justice system, and because of the lack of family support and responsibility for me, I stayed entrapped in that sort of behavior and that cycle all the way up until I was 25. I went on to adult imprisonment, spent a lot of time in adult imprisonment doing nothing, trying to figure out who I am, where I belong, how do I make myself safe, how can I live a life free from crime and drugs when this is the life that was handed to me and this is all I know, and nobody around me has ever built a life free of drugs and crime and violence and all of these things that come with growing up in a community like mine. I met my now wife back then, who supported me through the last stage of my incarceration, and I've really just had time to reflect about my childhood and my journey. And one of the biggest things that I talk about is no child maps out that they want to grow up to be a homeless heroin addict and commit crimes and be in and out of prison all their life. So I said, well, what do I need, to make myself happy and to keep me from making those same choices? And that's when I was able to get back to football and get connected to the things that made me safe internally, get connected back to my culture, see some of the family members that I felt necessary in terms of, me changing my behaviors. That was in 2013 and 14 now. And then since coming out of, the criminal justice space and the prison space, it's been a hell of a ride, but it's also been a big battle in terms of me trying to turn my life around. It was very hard to find employment with a criminal record, and it was very hard to sustain that employment with a criminal record because they didn't understand. Not only did I present as an employee, but I presented as an individual who had complex trauma and complex needs, and they are still learning how to support people like me. But due to my lengthy involvement, I lost my working with children's check, and I lost my job as a youth worker, and I went back to what I knew best, and I relapsed into drugs, and I isolated myself, and I was able to come back from that. And then 2 years ago, I made a decision to never, to never put myself in a position to be vulnerable again. And to understand that, Aboriginal people and First Nations people in their criminal justice and child protection is an added layer of complex. And if I work for a non-Indigenous organisation, I'm always going to have to convince them that this is the way you need to reach my people. Why? Because I'm still my people. So my wife had her own challenges in her workspace, being an Aboriginal woman, supporting an ex-offender. So we made the decision never to work for a non-Indigenous organisation again, trying to fight Indigenous issues. And that's how we came to Deadly Connections.
It's incredible what you're doing, and Igniting Change passionately believes in supporting organisations like yours that involve the people that use the services. And why I asked to share your story, and I know that you're very happy to to share your story, otherwise I wouldn't have asked you, is, I mean, I think everybody listening will think there's no one better to be offering the services than you, because you've been through it and you know it and you understand where the gaps are and you live and breathe what your younger self went through. So we too passionately believe in the early intervention instead of the detention. And what are you up to in this space? I mean, I know sometimes you go and meet young Indigenous men coming out of prison, because you know what it's like coming out and there's nobody there, and it's really a hard road.
So yeah, Jane, sorry to cut you off, but that's
I'm happy you do.
It's a very exciting space. We do have a full-time caseworker to be able to work intensively with young people. But at the same time, we're also advocating, you know, to stop locking 10-year-olds up. We're trying to advocate the minimum age be 14. Besides the advocacy and coalface work, we're also trying to create a program for that age cohort in what it would look like if the age of criminal responsibility was raised. The age was raised. So it's not like, oh, we raise it to 14, now no young person will commit a crime. We understand that, you know, some of these crimes will be committed, but what in terms of a legal recourse would that be for a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old? What else, man? We're trying to link in with the other sort of services that are on offer. There is a new project here in New South Wales called the New South Wales Koori Court. But for me, the troubling thing and the challenging thing is that young Aboriginal people cannot have access to that space or what they can service them unless they plead guilty to a crime. So we're trying to challenge the way in which they get services within the criminal justice space, because if you're not guilty of a crime, doesn't mean you don't need help. So we're very active in that space, trying to do alternative education, alternative traineeships and career sort of aspects for young people, you know, knowing that traineeships aren't really viable for young vulnerable people in between 16 and 18. They actually need a wage and an income to be able to be a part of whatever household they're in, or if not, make them independent.
What's the alternative education?
We're looking at the curriculum at the moment, but it's basically how do I say it, like RPL. So we're looking at forming a social enterprise and being able to give not just young people, but everyone an opportunity to work as a barista, to operate the cashier, to greet customers, to be able to sell some artwork. That way, when 12 months is up, we can actually say they've been employed for 12 months and now you can go out to the free market and get a job wherever you want. That's the ultimate goal. Because, you know, I just shared a little bit about my experience. It was one thing getting a job for me. It was another thing keeping it and going to it every day, given what was going on in my community, my personal life. Like I said, I wasn't just the employee. I was an actual living, breathing person that had problems when I showed up at work. And I just learned how to manage them different. So that for me, in terms of the space for young people, particularly with criminal records, if I can employ them and give them an actual reference, and when they apply for a job, they can say, not only am I qualified, I've got 12 months experience, because from my experience, I was overqualified when coming out of prison, but I lacked actual experience in the workplace, which was their sort of nice way to say, you have no experience in the workforce, so we can't hire you.
And what are your dreams going forward?
I think the ultimate goal, and this is just being honest and speaking from my heart, is to be redundant and never have a service like mine needed within my community and for my people. But I know that's unrealistic. So the second to that is to be fully resourced and sustainable, to be able to give our most vulnerable members in our community the right support at the right time, and to always be accessible and following through with that. So that would mean, you know, some more permanent staff, being able to roll our programs out a little bit more and accept some more people into those programs to be serviced and to be supported. Yeah, just to be fully resourced and to be sustainable. I think the biggest thing when working in this space as a charity and an Aboriginal community controlled charity is, government funding really negates the way in which we deliver our service. So unattached funds really puts us in the best position to pay it forward, to hire whatever type of specialist I need to do whatever type of work they need to do, but not to box them into certain KPIs, because I feel like we're in such a climate for my people, because we're trying to work with these issues of cultural responsiveness in a colonized framework, which really doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we take a life course approach, which means if we engage an individual and they fall off, all they have to do to get support is re-refer.
Yeah.
We don't deny them access to support just because they fell off or they committed another crime, or a child got removed when we were supporting them. We take a life course approach, because outside of the work and the charity space that I operate, we still live and breathe and participate in our community. So we're accountable to our community first and foremost, and then accountable to the policies and procedures that make us operate and govern the way in which we do.
I love hearing you say that. And I can remember not so long ago when you and I were having a conversation about how crazy it seems that kids using services are given one chance. And if they muck up, they're not allowed back into that service. And again, it comes back to so important to have people with lived experience. And I know your whole team has got this. And I know for Igniting Change, we are very proudly supporting you with untied support, because it feels so important at this early stage of what you're doing. But how can each of us on this Zoom support you further? What are the putting money aside, the messages that we need to, what are the key messages you think we need to be sharing? Obviously the lived experience one is very high on the list.
Yeah, of course, that's my first sort of key message, and that's been my message from the get-go, is the lived experience. Not talking about us without us. Whenever talking about providing a service for a particular cohort, having them co-design whatever service you're thinking of operating. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Second, like, I can give you guys a list. I think the best thing is you can see how sort of invested I am and we are here at Deadly Connections in terms of the operation and service delivery. So tapping into your knowledge and your networks and people you think that have a like-minded vision and a synergy with what Deadly Connections is wanting to achieve, and putting us in touch with them, because yes, money is one of the be all and end all in this industry, but if you have friends of friends that like what we're doing and have a certain type of support, or pro bono support or low bono support, we foster and harness all of those relationships to be able to get the work done. One of the biggest things that we're seeing, Jane, is we need a database. So everything we're doing is sort of case notes and Excel spreadsheets. So we don't actually have a client system database to put all of our files on digital file and extract them for reports and do all of those necessary things that the big charities do so well, because they're very well supported to do that. What else?
Well, that's what we might do, Keenan, is I can send out information. I can send a link to this talk, and then perhaps give people who are on the call more information about what you're doing, because it's unbelievable. I mean, you're doing so much. Did you get your minibus to pick up the young people?
No, we're still looking at a what is it, a people mover or family transport vehicle to be able to do activities, and the biggest thing in terms of servicing young people and getting them to experience a different quality of life is taking them out of the place that traumatized them. So I'm trying to do this amazing work in the same place where they're living below the poverty line, and there's crime and there's drugs, and how do I build a hope of a life better than the one that they're living if I keep entering a space where they're living and trying to show them another life when it's not tangible, it's not visible, it's not real, it's just an idea. So it's up to me to be able to alleviate that sort of stress of growing, of living in a dysfunctional community, and saying, well, this is what normal is here. Somebody who wakes up, who deals with their problems, who has the skills to assert their authority where necessary, and put boundaries in place, and all of these things that I'm learning now to be this person that I'm presenting in front of you guys with. Another thing to say, Jane, is, you know, I do present well and I do talk well, but my experience is very unique, and I battle every day with my mental health around my experience and being institutionalized, and my pure hatred for authority figures because of what they've done to me and the way in which they treated me. And I have to overcome that and be the change that I want to see if I want to make an impact into not just these young people's lives, but the older generation who may have lost hope of a better quality of life.
Oh, Keenan, you've hit deep. And on that note, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. And I respect you so much and love all that you're doing. And it's just great to be on this journey with you, and sending you lots of strength to you and all your team. And I know everybody else who's on the call will be doing so with me. And sorry, I'm a bit lost for words, but I think everyone can hear what an extraordinary human being you are. You're a great man and you're a great leader. And I just wish I was in Sydney. Now, there is a visit coming up in person on the 26th of April in Sydney. I hope I'll be there. Who knows? But let's keep in touch. And we're very, very proud to support you and your team.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
Have you got any last word you want to say?
Man, I think that just the other thing, Jane, is like, you know, there's so much that we do. I do like university lectures and, you know, media and social media. But the biggest message that I come home is challenging stereotypes and racist and derogative comments around a private table around Aboriginal people, and, you know, the outcomes and how we got here. Most people that talk about the issues that affect me, my people and my community, have never spent a day in there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Keenan. And it's great to be spending time with you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.